Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, the 13th of May 2020. And today we are again talking about fictional texts and, what fictional texts do with the reader and how fictional texts are written often. And last but not least, you will practice writing a little bit of your own. Okay, so let's take a look at fictional texts today. As I said, we will start with getting to know a little bit more about fictional texts. First, we'll start with narrative perspective. So we will talk about what narrative perspective is and what narrative perspectives there are. And then you will go on with some writing or some thinking about what you could write. Yes. Okay, so let's start with fictional text narrative perspectives. To start with, can you tell me or think about what narrative perspectives are there? So what narrative perspectives can an author use in a fictional text? We learned two so far. I can already tell you the two narrative perspectives that we got to know. The first one is, of course, the first-person narrator. And the second one is the third-person narrator. Now, I will give you, I'd say, 7 minutes time to write down everything you know about the first-person narrator and everything you know about the third-person narrator. So, what is special about this narrator? How does the reader feel when reading a text like this? And so on. So write down everything you know about the first-person and third-person narrator. Let's go. Okay, let's take a look and talk about it. So, a first-person narrator. What is a first-person narrator? Let's do it like this. A first-person narrator, well, tells the story from his or her point of view, or so his or her own perspective. So someone uses, or the author uses I to tell the story. For example, I fell down the stairs and then I had to go to the hospital. That's the first person narrator. Often, the first person narrator is the main character. Not always. Sometimes it's not the main character, but most of the time it is. Often the main character. Okay. What else can you say about the main or the first person narrator? Well, when a reader reads a story from the first person perspective, it's often the way that you experience, as reader, you experience the same things that the first person narrator and often the main character experiences. So you know exactly what the narrator is thinking, and you get really close to this character from the point of view it is told. So you get really close to the story and you know a lot about what the narrator or the main character in most cases, what he or she is thinking. So you get really close to this person and maybe you can identify more easily with the narrator or with the main character. So with the character, I mean, of course, the character who is telling the story. So the narrator. Okay, so you can identify with him maybe easier because you know a lot about what he or she is thinking. But that's also another point, that you only know what he or she is thinking. You don't know anything about the thoughts of other characters. So you only know what the narrator knows, and you know what he or she is thinking, but you don't know what the other characters are thinking. Okay. So that's a lot of things that you can say about the first person narrator. Do you have any questions concerning this kind of writing? Okay, if there are no questions so far, let's go on with the third person narrator. Let's take a look at this kind of writing. So, the third person narrator tells the story from an outside point of view. So this kind of narrator, you have he or she that is used, okay? For example, he fell down the stairs and then he had to go to the hospital, compared to I in the first person narrator perspective. Okay. Here, the perspective is not the main character's perspective. And the reader doesn't only get to know the main character, but he gets to know different characters equally. So you maybe get to know one person and then you get to know another person, because the narrator tells the overall story. Okay, so you get to know all characters equally. Also, in this kind of perspective, maybe it's sometimes easier to get to know the setting and the atmosphere from the outside, because the narrator can tell more about what the situation is like than a first-person narrator. Not always, but often that's the case. And here it's the case that maybe it's a little harder to identify with one character, because you get to know different characters from an outside point of view, and then maybe it's a little harder to identify with one character particularly. And you as a reader don't focus on one person. Most of the time you focus on more than one person. Not always, as I said, sometimes the focus is still on the main person, but most of the time it's easier to focus on more than one person when you read in a third person perspective. One character. Okay. Do we have more? Let's think about it. Well, in the first person narrator, you only know what the narrator knows, but with the third person narrator, you might get to know what different characters feel like and what they think. Okay, so these are the two main perspectives that we know so far that can be used in a story, in a fictional text, for example, in a novel. As you remember, in your books, you had two novel excerpts, and for example, the first person narrator is used in Pig Heart Boy, and the third person narrator is used in Among the Hidden. Okay, and with that in mind, with all of the things that we said now, and maybe the books that you have read lately, which narrative perspective do you like better? Do you like it when it's in the first person narrator, or do you like it when it is a third person narrator? You can think of some books you have read in the past. You can also think of the two beginnings of novels that you read in your book, and write down, maybe in 3 minutes, which narrative perspective do you like better, and write down why you like it better. Let's start. So, now can you please write in the chat which narrative perspective you like better? If there's anyone here who can write it in the chat, please do so. I will wait a few minutes if anyone responds. Okay, since no one wants to say anything, I will just give you some ideas that you maybe could write down if you like a certain kind of perspective. Okay, but always keep in mind these are just ideas. Maybe you have some other things that you like to say or that you think are interesting about a first person or a third person narrator. So yeah, just use these ideas maybe to think about what you like to read. So maybe when you like to read stories that have a first person narrator, you could say that you like to read them because you can identify with the character. You could also say that you maybe feel more connected to the story and to what's happening when you read a story with a first-person narrator. Also, maybe you like that you can feel what the main character feels, so you really bond with the main character. Okay. And well, maybe you also think it's more realistic to have a first-person narrator because, well, in real life, you can't know what other people are thinking. You only know your own perspective and what you think. And with a first-person narrator, you only know what this character feels and thinks, and maybe that's more realistic for you. Yes, and I will just do it like this because these are just some ideas, and maybe you have some more ideas or some more things that you feel when reading a story in a first-person perspective. So what about the third-person narrator? What could a person say when he or she likes this kind of, well, writing? You could say that you get a better overview of the story, so you know overall more what's happening or better what's happening. maybe you like that you don't don't only get to know one character, but you get to know a lot of characters better, and maybe you like that. And maybe you think the story is more interesting that way because you have more than one point of view. Okay. And again, I would just put ... because these are ideas for you that you can think about. And yes, maybe you can let me know when we see each other in class what you think of these two perspectives and what you like more. Maybe also, what books have you read more? Have you read more books that are written in the first person perspective, or have you read more books in the third person perspective? It would be interesting to know. Okay, so now let's go on. Now it's your turn again a little bit more today, because I'd like you to think of some of the aspects that we talked about. So you look at the pictures that I put here and you choose one picture. Now you imagine you want to write the beginning of the story. You have to take note on these important aspects. And here I wrote the important aspects that we talked about. We talked about suspense. So you have to take notes on how you can create suspense, how you can hook the reader into reading more. Then you have to take some notes on characters. What are the main characters? What is important to know about them? The beginning of the story, of course, not everything yet that you get to know, but maybe what you know at the beginning of the story of the characters. Then we have the atmosphere. What is the atmosphere like? How do you create atmosphere? Is it maybe a dark atmosphere, or is it scary and suspenseful and I don't know, something like this? Or is it really just a happy atmosphere? And so on. Then you have the narrative perspective that we just talked about. What narrative perspective do you use in the story and why? Here you can choose either the first person or the third person narrator. So here I'd like you not to write the beginning of the story, but to take notes, okay? So you can write down some bullet points on the 4 aspects: suspense, characters, let me do it like this so we can see it better: suspense, characters, atmosphere, and narrative perspective. Okay. And because this is really hard to, give you a solution for, I say that you should do this at home. Create a little story. Take some notes on suspense, on characters, atmosphere, and narrative perspective. And then you can send me your notes if you like, and I can look over your notes, and if they are good and if you are okay with it, I would upload your notes for the others on Moodle, so the others can take a look at your notes. Also, nochmal kurz auf Deutsch, damit es auch richtig verstanden wird. Es ist jetzt natürlich schwer, hier euch auch eine Lösung zu bieten. Ihr könnt jetzt natürlich drüber nachdenken. Ich werde euch jetzt auch Zeit geben, noch da euch Notizen zu machen wie ihr so eine Geschichte anfangen würdet. aber ich kann euch dann keinen Lösungsvorschlag geben, weil das einfach so individuell ist, was ihr da schreiben könnt. Jeder kann sich da ja was komplett Eigenes ausdenken. Eurer Fantasie sind da fast keine Grenzen gesetzt, sage ich mal. Natürlich die, dass ihr die Bilder mit einbeziehen müsst. Oder eins der beiden Bilder. Deswegen könnt ihr mir gerne, wenn ihr euch Notizen gemacht habt und sagt, ja, die sind gut geworden, ich finde, das ist eine gute Notizen, um Anfang einer Geschichte zu schreiben, dann könnt ihr mir das gerne per E-Mail schicken und ich würde dann die Notizen auch für die anderen einmal auf die Moodle-Plattform hochladen, damit die mal sehen, was ihr so gemacht habt. Also damit ihr euch einfach mal ein bisschen gegenseitig eure Notizen zeigen könnt. Ist halt nicht so einfach jetzt im Moment, dass man das macht, aber dann muss es halt über die E-Mail- und Moodle-Plattform gehen, wenn wir uns nicht wirklich im Unterricht unterhalten können. Genau, also ich gebe euch jetzt einfach mal noch 10 Minuten Zeit, euch Notizen zu machen. In der Zeit bin ich auch noch da für Fragen. Und dann könnt ihr die Notizen einfach mal an meine E-Mail schicken. Wenn ihr Lust habt. Also das ist auch freiwillig. Wer jetzt sagt, nee, meine Notizen sind nicht so gut, ich bin heute nicht so kreativ unterwegs. Kann natürlich auch mal sein. Dann müsst ihr das auch nicht schicken. Das ist ja nur für euch zum Üben. Nochmal, da ihr ja auch in den Aufgaben für diese Woche auch so was Ähnliches dabei habt. Und ich dachte, so kann man da nochmal ein bisschen Übung reinbringen in die ganze Geschichte. Okay. 10 minutes. Let's start. So, ihr hattet jetzt 10 Minuten Zeit, euch Gedanken dazu zu machen, zu diesen 2 Bildern und wie ihr diese 2 Bilder oder eins von diesen 2 Bildern besser gesagt in eine Geschichte umsetzen würdet, beziehungsweise die 4 wichtigen Punkte, die ich hier aufgeführt habe, wie die in einer Geschichte von euch am Anfang beschrieben werden sollen. Wie schon gesagt, ist es jetzt eher nicht möglich, euch da eine gute Lösung, einen Lösungsvorschlag zu geben. Deshalb schickt mir einfach, wenn ihr möchtet, eure Ideen per E-Mail. Ich gucke mir die gerne an und leite die dann für die anderen auf die Moodle-Plattform weiter, sodass ihr einfach euch mal ein bisschen untereinander austauschen könnt. Okay, das war es auch schon für heute zu fiktionalen Texten. Ab nächster Woche geht es dann wieder mit einem anderen Thema weiter und ich hoffe, wir sehen uns auch irgendwann bald wieder in der Schule. Ich denke mal, irgendwann im Juni wird es soweit sein, dass wir uns doch mal wiedersehen, noch vor den Sommerferien und dann auch da noch ein bisschen mehr zusammen oder besser auswerten können, was ihr so erledigt habt, was euch schwerfiel, was schon gut geklappt hat. Ja, das war's von mir für diese Woche. Ich wünsche euch eine schöne Restwoche und erholt euch ein bisschen, macht natürlich eure Aufgaben, die ihr zu erledigen habt. Und ja, wir sehen uns dann hoffentlich bald in der Schule wieder, beziehungsweise einfach nächste Woche im Stream. Have a nice day. Bye.